What is good, YouTube? It's your boy Jersey here, and as you can see, we're doing a Pokemon types tier list, baby. And in this tier list, we're gonna be ranking all the Pokemon types. If you're wondering why I feel like I have so much, if you're wondering why I have so much energy right now, it's because I woke up on 52. So bear with me throughout the entirety of this video. I am on 11. Okay. So we're going to start off with probably arguably one of the two worst types in the game, Bug type. I'm going to be honest, I think Bug really just doesn't do anything really well. The only thing that it does do really well is check Psychic types, depending on its secondary type. Bug is that one type where it's like, okay, buddy, I don't know what you're doing in this universe, but you are not it. So it's just a very interesting type. It's just like, it's so bad, I don't know how to fix it. One thing that you could do to probably fix it would be to give it a super effectiveness to Fairy that it should have. But I don't really think that would even make it maybe make it move up to C, but it really wouldn't do too much. It's definitely keep it still bottom of the barrel. It's just kind of useless. And Bug type designs are hard carried by Scizor. Let's just be honest. Even Pinsir doesn't look that cool. Next up, we got Dark types. Now, Dark type as a type in general, I would say probably C tier. I don't really think that they do too much crazy. In the terms of competitive sense, the only real Dark types that I could think of that are really good right now would be T-Tar, Urshifu Dark, and Weavile. But those Pokemon to me feel like they get carried by the secondary typing. Actually, you know what? Let me move it up to P. Because now that I thought about the Pokemon that use that type really effectively, they are really good at their job, which is playing unfair. I think also design heavily carries the Dark type. By the way, I'm doing this tier list as in general, like not just as the Pokemon type in competitive battling, but I will take some aspects of that. And I'll be talking about like how they feel offensively and defensively and stuff like that. Offensively and defensively, this type kind of has its own type trio with Psychic and Fighting. And it's very odd that it takes super effective damage from Bug, which made no sense. Still makes no sense to me. But I feel like Dark is that one type where it's like, okay, you have it on your team, cool, I can handle it. Oh, and Fairy. I forgot about Fairy. Fairy kind of knocks it down a peg, but yeah, I think C tier is the right one. Design almost negged it up to B tier. I think it also has some of the best moves with Dark Void when it was added, but then Dark Void got nerfed and stuff like that. I think it can Wellow in C tier. All right, we have Dragon. Good old reliable. It used to be S tier. Used to be the best type in the game. Then Fairy added it and knocked it down a peg. It's old. I don't want to say glass cannon, but kind of glass cannon-y. It's basically like those old men in anime where they'll turn up at one moment, but they kind of get hard-walled by that youngster that they trained 20 episodes before. That's kind of Dragon to me. They resist the old elements, which would be electric, fire, water, and grass. Then they get mauled by frozen water, but oh well. And then they can't beat themselves because if you put two old anime men against each other, they're just gonna KO each other, right? And then they can't beat girls. Master Roshi proves that, and so does Jiraiya. So yes, this is the Master Roshi type. But yeah, they definitely beat most types in the game just because they obviously hit it for neutral, and typically dragons based at totals are through the roof. Design wise, I mean, most dragons are designed really well because 90% of the time they're pseudo legendaries. or anything of those sorts. And then there was Ruddigon. Oh my god, I don't know who designed this Pokemon, but whoever did deserves to be fired. Next up, we have Electric type. Personally speaking, I'm gonna see how the rest of this tier list goes. Electric type could easily move up to A tier. It really has everything going for it. Design is really good. Actually, let's move it up to A tier right now. Design is really, really good. Its moves are really, really good. The Pokemon that use it typically are really, really good. It benefits from having only one real weakness, which is ground typing, which allows it to be really, really good with specific Pokemon that would realistically don't want another weakness. Any ice typers in the chat or any really flying types that get rid of that ground weakness also benefit, like Zapdos, for example. There's not much I can really say about it because I mean it's really just a great all-around type offensively and also defensively because it only has one weakness. All right, let's just get right into the best type in the game, Fairy, easily. There's not much to say about it. It staves off. It's literally immune to the second best type in the entire game in terms of offensive firepower. Defensively, it's not great, but offensively, it's pretty solid. It's got the same mentality as Dragon. Very little resist it. So I'm just gonna maul you, basically. Let's just move on to Fighting type. I think Fighting type is about B tier. I think it benefits from being strong against rock. It doesn't really care about ice because ice is not that good. And it's really, really good against one of the better types in the game, being steel. It takes it knocked down because Fairy is super effective. I had it here in my original rankings, and then I remembered Fairy is super effective to fighting. That's just something that doesn't really roll off the tongue very well. If it makes any sense to me, it doesn't make any sense to me because technically fighting isn't really the fighting type, it's the light type. Why is Fairy super effective to good or light? I don't know. It's very interesting. It's peculiar in a sense. However, I do think it's better than its evil counterpart, Dark. Just Pokemon alone make it better, in my opinion. Next up, we have Fire. Fire is easily one of the better in the starter type trios. There's only one that's really a loose leaf when it comes to those three in that trio. Fire actually resists Fairy, which is something I found out recently while playing on ladder, like probably 2 or 3 months ago. So that changes some things. I understand why Intimidate Arcanine was really, really good in Sun and Moon because of that. It's just little things like that I tend to forget, realistically, because Fairy is new. Fire right now is really, 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 really good. You cannot make a team that does not have a fire type unless you add in another type that is later. It really benefits from that Fairy resist. And also, the only 2 things that can really, really counter it super, super hard is rock and water types. Because ground types, yeah, they hit fire super effective, but they don't actually resist fire, meaning you can counterattack them very, very well. So I think fire type, similar to electric type, is just very good. Fire is definitely all around strong. It's defensively pretty solid. It's offensively amazing. And that's really it. This one could drop to B, if I'm going to be honest, but I don't really see it. I think flying is B tier, in my opinion. I think flying is just a type that you use to benefit a secondary type, if that makes any sense. But also, in a sense, some Pokemon are very hindered by it. Like, for example, if Gyarados was Water Dark to begin with, I feel like Gyarados would be a lot better of a Pokemon. Whereas, I think that Gyarados being water flying really hurts it. Really, 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 really hurts it. And I think the only reason why flying is even competitively successful as a type is because the Pokemon that gain it are ridiculous. Like the nature trio are just they're just so busted. If I'm being honest, it's just like, that's the sole reason, in my opinion, I think that type is worth anything. Its coverage moves are pretty good. That's why it's in B tier. Its Pokemon are amazing, which is why it's in B tier. But design-wise, I don't personally think that it deserves anything higher than a B tier. Next up, we got our good old friend, the Ghost type. Also B tier. I think that it's really heavily carried by Gengar and Dragapult in OU, not Ubers. I just genuinely don't think that Ghost is that great of a type. It's amazing at spin blocking if you still rapid spin in 2022. But if you're still rapid spinning in 2022, then yeah, you might need a Ghost type. But other than that, you really don't really need it. With the exception of what's his face? Calyrex Shadow. That's the only Ghost type that I think you desperately need on a team. But I mean, I'm gonna be honest. If it had that base stat total, the exact same base stat total, and any other combination, I don't think it would really care. I'm gonna be honest. It takes a double weakness to Dark, which doesn't benefit it at all. But Ghost type, very mediocre type. I could probably see some Pokemon that would be a lot better if they didn't have the Ghost type. But also, there's some Pokemon that are heavily carried by their Ghost type. I'm looking at you, Gengar. Because if you weren't fast and you weren't Ghost type, your Poison type would drag you down straight to the mud. Next up, we got Grass. Now, Grass, if you caught my loose leaf joke, Grass is the worst out of the starter trio by far, in my opinion. I don't think Grass does anything really, really well at all. I mean, it loses to any stab of the literal worst type in the game. All of the mediocre types of flying, and then, flying hits it really well. Fire destroys it. Defensively, it's not very good. Offensively, what does it check? Water, ground, rock. In which fighting can already do that. Water can do that, but better. It's just like, there's no real need to put a Grass type on a team. Design-wise, Grass types are not very good design-wise. Just being completely honest. I swear to God, if I see any Chespin fans in my comment section saying how Chespin is the greatest designed Pokemon of all time, I'm just gonna block you, because you're lying. Hashtag Chespin is ugly. Alright, let's move on, because now I just angered the entire Chespin community. Let's move on to Ground type. Ground type is probably A tier to S tier. I think Ground type is absolutely amazing. It obviously checks the equally as amazing Electric type. It checks, if I'm not mistaken, it checks, hold on, let me double check something. I believe it checks Rock types. Let me double check. It could be the other way around. That's the one type I don't really know off the top of my head. That's what I thought. It checks Rock types. It checks the ever so apparent Steel types. It checks Fire, it checks Electric, it checks Poison. Offensively, there's no better typing in the game well, that's a lie. Fairy is easily the better offensive type. However, Ground is a very, very close second when it comes to offensive firepower. Now, the only two types that really, really check it, the only three types that really, really check them are Water, Grass, and Ice. And in my personal opinion, I don't feel like any of those types are really, really good, with the exception of Water. Water is definitely really, 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 really good. Grass isn't, and Ice is probably, let's just segue to our next type. Ice is easily down there with Bug. It does not give you any defensive utility at all. It is strictly a glass cannon, which is ironic because, I mean, I know glass isn't made out of ice, but it might as well be. It's basically as brittle as a thin layer of ice. It's kind of ironic, but I don't know. Ice types, to me, I feel like ice types are more redeemable to me than bug types. I feel like ice types need a couple of buffs in the right areas in order to make themselves very beneficial. Meaning that I think that ice types are very close to not being absolute dog water, because if that was if ice was actually like in the same spot as bug, why would the majority of good Pokemon decide to have an ice coverage move? You get what I'm saying? Ice is really good offensively, it just sucks defensively. It has like little to no resist. It's just like you throw ice on a type, it just doesn't really do much besides giving their ice coverage move stab. That's really it. But with that being said, I don't feel like Game Freak really cares about the ice type. I feel like it's gonna stay as a coverage move type, similar to how I feel about electric. Electric is really good as a type. Like the Pokemon design wise and all that are really good. However, I tend to not build teams with electric types simply because I once did that and got hard countered by Landorus Therian. We don't talk about it. I never talked about it on this channel and I never will. Next up we got normal type. Normal type is definitely C tier. I mean, it's okay. It's not really great. It's just like normal. It's very mid. I mean, I can't say that you can't build a team around a normal type. I mean, because Gen 6 VGC shows that Mega Kangaskhan was probably the greatest thing to ever touch the earth. But it's like, it's very mediocre. I mean, it only has one weakness, being fighting, and it has an immunity of Ghost. And Rock and Steel types resist it. So, I mean, you hit most of the game neutral. I mean, Guts boosted, Guts boosted, Flame Orb, Guts boosted, Stab, Facades are really good, but other than that, it's very mediocre. It's okay. It's kind of like Dark type in my opinion. It's okay to have it as a coverage move or anything like that, but I wouldn't really necessarily build a whole team around a normal type unless you need a normal type. But when would you need a normal type? Whereas Dark and Grass both have a chance of being necessary on a team, normal just doesn't. Poison. Okay, Poison as a type, you gotta take into account design of Pokemon, the actual Pokemon, the moves, that C tier. Okay. I don't know, man. Poison is another type where it's like, it's hard carried by design and by moves. I don't really know where to put this. I mean, if Toxic didn't exist, Poison would probably be down there with Bug and Ice, if I'm gonna be honest. Toxic is the only move, in my opinion, that's really good. Sledge Wave is okay. Poison Jab is decent. Yeah, I think it does have to wallow in C tier. I think it's really the actual Pokemon themselves aren't even that good. So it's, yeah, definitely gonna wallow in C tier. I think if Steel types weren't immune to it, it would probably go up a little bit, but for now, it's gonna remain right here. Next up, we got Psychic types. I think Psychic types deserve, and I say this with a wholeheartedness, I think they deserve B tier. And the reason why I say Psychic types deserve B tier is simply just because the Pokemon that use them are nuts. The moves are also equally as nuts, and the design of Pokemons are either the best or literally the worst. And that is exactly the reason why I gave it a B tier ranking, because it's very mid. I mean, I think the only couple types that hit super effectively are Bug, Ghost, and Dark. And the Pokemon that it hits super effectively off the top of my head is Fighting and Poison. So it doesn't really have the greatest type repertoire per se, so that's why it's not an A tier like Electric, which gets carried by in a similar way that Psychic does. However, it cannot lie, Psychic deserves a B tier. Next up we got Rock. I don't like this type, personally speaking. Well, I'm putting it in B tier. Personally, no, because it's a similar thing with Poison to me. I think that Poison and Rock are on the same pedestal, in my opinion. Rock gets countered by Grass, it gets countered by Water, it gets countered by Fighting, it gets countered by, I believe, also possibly Ice. Let me double check this. No, it does not get countered by Ice. It gets countered by Water, Grass, Fighting, Ground, and Steel. Sorry, it's super effective to Ice. That's the one I always forget. And it only really checks Fire, Flying, and Bug types. And Ice types. So it counters the two worst types in the game. It counters one of the better types in the game, and it counters a mid type. And it has 5 weaknesses. It's just, I think the only thing that keeps it from D tier, in my personal opinion, is 2 moves: Stone Edge and Stealth Rock. That's it. If those 2 moves didn't exist, this Pokemon type would be in D tier with Bug and Ice. That move both of those moves hard carry them, but I digress. Next up we got Steel type. Easily best defensive type in the game. Doesn't hit much super effectively, but you gotta bring a select type of Pokemon in order to beat them. And also it gets the benefit of being super effective. It's the best offensive type of the game. It's just all around a menace. Its moves are okay. They're not great, but it doesn't really matter when you can't really hit it for shit. I mean, the only things that hit it super effectively that I can name off the top of my head: Fighting and Ground, and then I think, Fighting, Ground, and Fire. I don't know why I couldn't think of Fire. Those are the only types that it can hit super effectively that I can name off the top of my head. I think I'm missing one. No, I'm definitely not, because for some reason I was thinking Rock was super effective to it, and Steel is super effective for Rock. So with that, Steel just boasts some of the craziest abilities. Like, it's just, there's not much you can really do with a Steel type, if I'm gonna be honest. Defensively, offensively, it's hard to play into a Steel type, if that makes any sense. When you're building a competitive team, you basically your team is relegated to how well can you counter Steel types and how well can you counter Fairy types. And if you don't have a check for either one of those, GG. And as you've seen, or as you didn't, I guess I can mention this. My comfort team has a hard time dealing with what is the Necrozma Duskmane is a big menace for that team. And it's simply because while we do have like one counter that's okay at dealing with Steel types, if that counter does die, it's GG. So that team isn't very good at countering Steel types. It's also very abysmal at countering Fairy types, but it does counter Calyrex Shadow very, very well. So last but not least, we got the beautiful, beautiful Water type. I think Water type deserves an even A tier, in my opinion. I think defensively it's amazing. Offensively it's also equally as amazing. It's basically the all-around type. If there was an all-around type in Pokemon, it would easily be Water type. And if you pair Water with Steel, it's probably going to be one of the best Pokemon in the game, especially if it boasts pretty good defense. Just being honest, because it gets rid of that Fire weakness. However, I think that it suffers from design flaws. I think every single water type Pokemon, in my opinion, looks hideous. I just don't like any water Pokemon design, with the exception of Resolute Keldeo. That is it. Keldeo is the only water Pokemon design I actually like. Just being honest. So that is probably what stops it from going in S tier. However, I think A tier is fair for it. And looking at this list, I don't think I could really argue with anything that I've put anywhere. I think with the exception, you might be able to move Electric down, and you could possibly move Water up and Rock down. That would be the only thing that I would make to make any changes to make it look more even. But other than that, this tier list looks really good to me. Let me know how you guys think about this tier list in the comment section below. And remember, I'm ranking this off of design, moves, the actual type itself, and also even the Pokemon that use the type. With that being said, I'm out. Peace out.